sign. Now, from that grew something else. I mentioned, did we get those sheets made, Linda?
I passed them out, everybody has them.
Where's Linda?
I'm right here, I passed them
Oh,
out.
oh, you did?
Everybody has
Okay. Could I have one? I'll borrow this. Okay. Now, I just, we've used a connection card, but I designed this one new this last week. And this is actually would be a front and back, not necessarily the size. But on the front, look at it. Because it's called a connect, communicate. Now this is so important. Now, and I'll talk about this will be of no use to you unless you get people here. There's one thing that you cannot grow a church without. And if I do a little quick survey on that, people, oh, you got to believe the Bible. Okay? I know a lot of churches that believe the Bible don't grow, never reach anybody. Well, you got to have money. You got to have. I know wealthy churches. I know a church got $500,000 in the bank, and they're dying. So, the one thing you have to have, you cannot grow a church without it. In fact, a church will eventually die if you don't have this. That's first-time visitors. Because if you don't have first time, they can't come second time. Right? Does that make sense? Or the third time. So you've got to have visitors there. But assuming we can find a way for you to do that, and I can help you with that, because you have to, there's a acrostic I use, attract, attach, dispatch. You have to attract people to you to make them come. They want to come, or they're invited to come, or you do a direct mail piece and people come, whatever. So attract, and you attach to them. You attach them to you. They're hungry to belong, to be loved. And then you dispatch them into ministry. Some may become a missionary, or somebody may become a pastor. But internally, most people are dispatched within the church itself. I have if I can find it here. I don't know whether you didn't get a copy of this, but this is what was our volunteer ministers. I don't know where you see that. But this is a listing of everybody in our church that was involved in a ministry service. Hundreds of people. Some did 1 or 2 jobs, but this is a list all the way through of everything we do. This is the volunteers. This is people who do ministry, because everything you do in a church is ministry. We did not have a full-time custodian. We could well afford it. That wasn't the issue. The issue, we had people that had time and the ability and wanted to do that. And there's probably 25 or 30 different people on here that had jobs that were assigned to them, and they took care of it.
All right, so oh, go ahead, see Florida. Yeah, Florida. Yeah, I'm an actual Floridian. Yeah, the rare one. Yeah, I don't mean the real Floridians anymore. Where you from? Illinois? Okay. Yeah. You 20 years old? Oh wow, cool deal. Army or what? Yeah, my wife, she's from Kentucky, Ohio. Where's she from? Yeah, she's from Kentucky, Ohio. Like in the hills of Kentucky, like up in the coal mine.
You're related
She was,
to
that's where she's from. Yeah.
I am his brother. Yeah, he told me.
Yeah, my son, he was stationed in Kentucky.
See, you're married to his sister?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Now, is she the one that sings?
Yeah.
With him?
No, Campbell. Yeah, he was aerosol. Yeah, he was infantry aerosol. Campbell. Yeah. I think.
okay.
Yeah, it was Campbell.
Yeah. They were pretty close growing up.
Yeah, I went over to, I think it's First Baptist Dover. They sung on Sunday night.
Yeah.
The little concert. Were you there?
I was at the one at one at Church Street.
Maybe it's Turkey Creek.
Yeah.
Sunday night, a couple few months ago.
Yeah.
Kids didn't get
I was up in the sound booth. I used to run sound over there.
I know.
Yeah. So I was haunting old places.
Did you test this already?
Yes. I may have to make it a volume adjustment or whatever once you start speaking.
Well, you can figure it out.
Yep.
I'll let you do that.
But you always have to figure for that. Right now, just put it straight out. And then just hit the line. Ready, Matt?
All right, good morning, church. I guess we'll go ahead and get started. I guess everybody's somewhat settling down now, so we'll get started. Again, welcome this morning. We got a little something different today. We're lucky to have Pastor Jay back with us this morning, and he's going to go over the process of how to grow a church. You know, again, we're kind of in this transition period right now. Hopefully, we'll get a pastor soon. Hopefully, get a pastor soon. I heard that we do have a bunch of applications in, and I know the pastor that spoke last week was one of the applicants, and I guess the applicants are going to start preaching. We'll be blessed to even have Andy Shirley come preach with us next week. He's a friend of mine, and all of us at Hopewell know him, so he's a great guy. Again, this morning we're blessed to have Pastor Jay back with us, going over this whole process this morning. So hopefully everybody can take some good notes. I know I got my book over there, and I'm gonna take some notes, and hopefully, as we kind of grow and kind of change this church, as we know, we're kind of redoing this whole process again. I'm going to start with the announcements this morning. The church actually has the new website now is up. The information is in the back corner on the table right there. It's got the new church website on there, new donation page on there. The church has got some new emails and everything on there. It's all on there. Also, they've got a new YouTube channel. For right now, all the recordings are going to be put on the YouTube channel, so go subscribe to the new church YouTube channel under the City Baptist name. Let's see what else here. I think that was it right there for that one. The offering today is in the baskets back there for the offering. There's also the online. I like the online pay because I never carry cash. I haven't read a check in I don't know how long. So the online pay works perfect. Also, there's a sign-up sheet back there too. If you want to provide a meal for the Halsey family, go ahead and sign up. She's actually holding it up out there right now to sign up for the food for them as well. The drop-off for that will be anytime on the 16th before 4 p.m. And let's just talk about her funeral real quick. We all know that Miss Liz Halstead, she passed away this week. So just keep that family in prayer as they kind of go through this lifelong mourning process that they're just now beginning. It's always hard to lose somebody, anybody, especially mother or wife. That's devastating for sure. Again, she passed away Thursday. Her funeral is going to be on the next Thursday, on the 16th, here at the church. Visitation is going to be between 11 and 1, the viewing over there, and then the service will start at 1. And then the interment's going to be at 3 at the Hillsborough Memorial in Brand. I believe that's the one at the very end of Brand, if I'm not mistaken, the one by the mall down there. That's the Hillsborough one. That's where she'll be at for there. Again, just keep that family's prayer as they're going through this time right now, because again, that's just a devastating time. Let's pray. Father God, just thank you again for this moment, Father. Just thank you for coming together as a church family, Father, as we just kind of learn this process just to grow and just to be with you, Father, and just to really kind of expand your kingdom, Father. I know you have a plan for this church, Father. Just help us find out what our new plan is, our new mission, new trajectory, the way we're supposed to go, Father. Just the pastor that you've got for us, Father, picked out, Father, just send him our way, Father. I know they're starting to line up now, Father. Just let him step forward and just let him really be noticed, Father. Just take reins in this church so we can do great things in your name, Father. I just want to lift up the Halstead family, Father. Just they're hurting today, Father, and they're going to be hurting for a long, long time, Father. Just be with them. Just ask that you just guide their hearts right now, Father. Just hug them and just love them, Father. Just let them know that you've got her, that she's in a far better place than we are right here, Father. The hurt comes just a longing to miss her, Father. Just be with them and just love them and guide them. In Jesus' great name we pray. Thank you, Pastor Tony.
Well, good morning. Let me just begin by kind of telling you, someone gave you my testimony recently, and how I came to Christ and so forth. But to kind of bring us to where we are now, so you know what I'm doing, it might help you to know this. I came to Christ at 17. My sweetheart and I, we've been married now 62 years, 5 children, 14 grands, and as far as I know, only 6 grades. There might be some more out there yet, I'm not sure about. But at 24, I began following Jesus. I had not done so. I didn't know how. Didn't grow up in a Christian home, didn't have any information. The church I was baptized in didn't have a discipleship program. You either came or you didn't, and so forth. And I was on a Sunday, about right after church time. I was not in church. I saw a family. I think, if I remember right, maybe 3 children. They had been to church, you could tell, and they were walking across the street, going to eat. And in a moment of just paradigm moment, I recognized what the emptiness was in my life. And I saw it in the people. And God said to me, that's what you want. You want to have me in your life and a church in your life. And that's when I made a move to church not long after. Maybe less than a year, I went to my pastor and I said, I want to do something. You know, I had a burning passion for ministry. And he said, well, maybe God's calling you to preach. I didn't know what that meant. Honestly, I did not know what that meant. I did know that God, I didn't want to be a preacher, but I wanted to serve God. So I surrendered, not to preach, but I surrendered to ministry. And in the course of time, that evolved into preaching. I preached a revival meeting, and it was a fantastic meeting. Had 27 people saved in a country church. So I thought maybe God wants to be an evangelist. So I did evangelism for a while. Then an opportunity came, and the church wanted me to be their pastor. A couple of hundred, good church, good salary, which I desperately needed about that time. But then there was a small group of people that wanted to form a church. Maybe, I don't remember now, maybe 6 or 7 families, top in 30, 40, 50 people. And so I was driven to that, strangely. Didn't make practical sense for me. But I came to realize over the years that what God was calling me to do is what I'm now doing, and did really for 42 years in some sense. Because we took that little nucleus, formed a church, and I stayed 7 years, and we reached 750 in attendance. Actually had big days, over 1,000. And then a church in Texas called me that was far less than what I was pastoring. And I was strangely led to go to that church. And we built it, grew it, up to 1,250 Sunday school average. And then an opportunity opened in Lakeland, a church of about 80. And I strangely went there and stayed 22 years. But I knew what not only what I had done through those years, was the fact that God had equipped me to grow, not to sustain. I turned down opportunities for larger churches. I had no desire. See, God wires everybody different. And I never felt any compulsion to move up, always down, because what God has done for me is equip me for what I'm doing now, and really did for 42 years, was to grow, to establish, to restructure, to get a church on great footing. That's what my passion is. So that's really what I do now and have for the last 12 years, is to what I call a church restart, which involves restructure, a repurpose, number one. Repurpose why we're here. Restructure in order to fulfill that purpose. And then that re-energizes the church for growth. And that's the way that it works. So what I want to do is I want to kind of bring us to where I think you are, and you know better where you are than I do. But this is pretty standard across the country. There's 40,000, maybe it's 47,000, I don't remember. 40,000 Southern Baptist churches. Most churches now average, the average is about 60 or 70. And then there are big churches. There's medium-sized churches. There's mega churches. But the rank and file of churches across the country are pretty much under the 100 range. Now, there's a reason for that. We're going to look at those reasons. But let me tell you a little story that'll lead to this, because this will make it easier for you to hear. Because this is really kind of like surgery. You know, when we have an issue, we go to the doctor. We don't always like the news, but we need to hear the truth, right? So that we can get well. I don't know, anybody ever seen the movie Seabiscuit? If you haven't seen it, you need to watch it. It's a great movie. And I had seen it a number of years ago and watched it again recently, and something just impacted me about that I had not seen the first time. Seabiscuit was sired by a man of war. Man of war was actually the grandfather and had produced great racehorses. Man of war was one of the greatest racehorses in history. So this was the grandson And when Seabiscuit was born, Seabiscuit didn't look like Man of War. It was a smaller horse, different color. And they looked at Seabiscuit and said, you know, he'll never amount to much. And so consequently, they trained Seabiscuit. He was really hard to train. And so they trained Seabiscuit to run with the real racehorses to lose. So the great stallion would gain confidence. So Seabiscuit was actually held back so that the big thoroughbred could win and give the thoroughbred confidence. So basically, Seabiscuit was trained to lose. Well, over a period of time, things evolved, and someone saw Seabiscuit one day and recognized something in this horse that sparked the attention that this could be a great horse. So the long story shortened is that Seabiscuit was retrained to reach the potential that was in this horse that so far had been negated by training the horse to be a loser. So Seabiscuit was retrained to begin to run and begin to win races, of course. And consequently, being a West Coast horse, on the East Coast was a horse, if I remember right, War Admiral, great champion, Triple Crown, all that kind of stuff. And there was a match race made. Finally, they agreed to have a race, a match race. Seabiscuit won by 4 lengths. A horse that never lost. Seabiscuit won. Now, that reason that sparked in my heart is because of what I do. There's a lot of Seabiscuit churches that have never reached their potential, that have great potential. That's what God has allowed me to be a part of in my pastoral ministries. Because I'm a Seabiscuit jockey. I've never had a desire or even any inclination to take a big church. You know, I've had pastor friends say, "You're nuts. You could go there. Look over the salary, the benefits." I have no desire. So see, I'm a Seabiscuit jockey. I love Seabiscuit churches. And you are a Seabiscuit church. Because you have the potential to do far more than you've ever imagined. And so what I want to help you do is understand, how do you do that? See, most churches really, and I don't know the full history of this church, was about 100 years old? Would you say somewhere around there? Okay. How many people do you think have come and gone in 100 years? How many thousands? How many, I mean, you're I suppose 40, 50 now. So the problem is not the character of the people. I find in the Seabiscuit churches, people who love the Lord, they're the salt of the earth. They love America, they love the Bible, they love God, but there's never been a system of training to expedite growth. One of my former staff members is the vice president of the North American Mission Board. And Tom called me one day and said, "I want you to come to Houston. We're going to have this big conference." And I said, "Well, I'll check it out, see if I can go." It's the Second Baptist in Houston, where Ed Young's a pastor, run 10,000 more. I don't know how big it is now, maybe more than that. But they were having this gigantic sponsored conference by now, North American Mission Board, for pastors to come. And so I figured out the cost, travel, hotel, all that. Well, my church would have paid for that, but I didn't. I said, "Tom, have you ever thought about the fact that the people that really need that can't afford to go? The pastors in this country that need that conference, they don't have $1,000. Church doesn't have $1,000 to spend to go. Why don't you plan training and help and encouragement for the rank and file churches across the country, because sure, they'd wind up with 500 pastors there. All churches running 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. And so I say all that to say that I'm a Seabiscuit jockey. I have no interest in the big thoroughbreds. I have an interest in you and churches like this all across the country. That's my passion. And it's a deep burning passion. So what I want to share with you is first to identify kind of where you are, and then show you how to get to where I think you want to be. This little diagram, and you've probably noticed by now, I'm certainly not an artist. A church, every church, whether small or large, has three components, always. You have a cause, that's your mission. You have community, that's the fellowship, that's family. Okay, and then you have the corporate side, that's the business side. Now, a well-structured, growing church has all three. A small, struggling church has all three. Here's the difference. Small churches operate all three of these in one circle. You're everything. Every place I've pastored 3 churches. The first one was just the beginning nucleus, so we organized it the way we needed to. But the 2 other churches operated like this. Everything functioned in one body, one system. So in here is your business. You do business in here. Everybody does the business. In here, everybody's part of the community. Everybody is part of the cause. But here's what happens when you operate in one circle. I'll have another see here. Chaos. Human nature will not allow you to do this. It's proven over the centuries. It's proven in tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of churches. When you operate all three in one circle, you have chaos. Just human nature. Monthly business meetings, even getting to the quarterly business meeting, you're still functioning everything in one circle. Now this represents another kind of church, which is primarily more of the old mainline denominations. When I was pastor, my first church, there was a man in town who was a Methodist. And his wife was really into it. I mean, she was a social director, and they were a big social program. And he fell in love with our work because we were reaching people. We were winning souls and growing, and great things were happening. And he took note of that. And he would have left. He would have left where he was and became a Baptist in a heartbeat. But you know, when you're married. So every December, he would call me and say, you know, a gigantic office supply, all kind of supplies, desks, files, equipment, you can imagine. He said, come get anything you want. And he would give us thousands and thousands of dollars every December to get it off his inventory and make a gift to us. His church operated like this. It was all business. They had certain people ran the business. Of course, they had fellowship, their social systems, and hardly any mission. It was just a social group, basically. Not like the old line Methodists. Some Methodists, you know, I'm saying, if John Wesley came back to most Methodist churches, the steeple would be coming down. But this church was not like the Methodist churches were at the beginning. Everything was separate, and they had money, they had buildings, but no mission. So this does not work because it doesn't drive mission. There's no soul winning, there's no evangelism. They're just there. This is a Seabiscuit church, untrained. And when you have all three of these functioning in one system, if you've been here, you know that's true. I don't have to convince you of that, because it's just routine all the way through. The church I took when I came to Florida, back to Florida, was like that. Wonderful people. A lot of family connections. You know, I could tell you the 5 families that had generationally, their kids had married, they were wonderful people, loved the Lord, but it was like this. And so what do you do? How do you get around that? Well, here you have disconnect and no real passion for mission. You see them everywhere. High steeple, few people. Okay. Well, what do you do? These have to interconnect. So you're not, everybody's not leading. There's not, God never created an organization in this world where everybody leads. That's true in the family. That's true in any organization. If you look at everything going to the Old Testament, when God did something, he called a leader. Whether it was Moses or Joshua or whoever. There was always a point leader. So they have to interconnect so that you get family, you get community, you get the business side of the church. They're all interconnected, but it allows the mission to function, to actually be engaged in what it's supposed to be doing without the chaos. So you have a chart. I don't have time to go through all this, but I think Linda Jo made you a copy, and you can take that and you can study it. And I'll just do a couple here very quickly. The metaphor of community is family. See, a church is family. That is, you tend to think of one another as brothers and sisters, and the Bible uses those terms, fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters. So we understand that within the church, you are a family. You treat one another like family. If somebody's sick, you care about them. If somebody's hurting, you reach out to them. If somebody has a need, that's what this is. That's family. That's community. And then the core value. Look at the core value. And I don't have time to go through it, but the core value of community is love, loyalty, mutual support. And I would venture to say you do great at that. Most small churches do a great job of love and loyalty and support. The mission, the cause, of course, when you move that into the circle, is to make disciples. You know, in the business world, here's what consulting in the business world, very simple. Here it is, simple. What is your business? Okay, we make widgets. Or we make refrigerators, or we make this or that, whatever. Okay. What is your business? How is business? Well, it's not good. Okay, so do you want to make business better? You want to sell more widgets? You want to sell more refrigerators or whatever? So that's a simple consulting role of a business consultant. Now, when we come to church, let's ask the same question. What is your business?
Winning souls and discipling them.
It's simple then. We only have one commission. Go ye into all the world, preach the gospel. Okay, baptizing them. And then the other commission spelled a little different, so go make disciples. So your business is making disciples. We all agree on that? Okay, that's your business. How's business? Okay. Do you want business to be better? That's where someone like me comes in, a Seabiscuit jockey. See, I can tell you how to do that, because your business is to win people to Christ, baptizing them, make disciples. Okay, if you're not satisfied with the degree you're doing that, then you figure out how do we do that better. Now, so here you have community, that's family. Here you have cause, that's making disciples. The corporate side is how do you finance that? You know, how do you handle that, the corporate side of it? And so the core value here is efficiency, excellence, and accountability. Efficiency and accountability. It's just impossible to do that all. Everybody is not equipped to do that. For example, in my house, my wife is the corporate. You know why? Because she's better at it than I am. She's our bookkeeper. She pays the bills. She keeps everything orderly. See? So, does that mean that I'm not connected to that? No. Sometimes she'll even ask my advice. You know, so but you see what I mean? She's better equipped. There are people in every church that's better equipped to handle finances efficiently and create accountability systems. Now, when I went to my last church where I stayed, we didn't have that. We had monthly business meetings. We did business on first Wednesday night of every month. There was no real budget. The church decided every month that they pay the light bills or paint the walls or buy something or whatever. Well, it's chaotic. So you have to connect, but you also have to separate but intersect with those, because nothing, I mean, all this interconnects, but in a different way to make you functional. Okay. Now you can read through that. It's extensive on the core values, the roles. Who's the role what are the roles in a home, for example? Father, mother, children. Who gets the most attention? Now we have 5, so I'm telling you. They all need attention. But the one that was hurting got the most attention. That's the way you focus. That's what happens in a church. See? Who's hurting? Who's sick? Who's dying? What family has just had a death? See, that's father, mother, that's family. That's the core value in the community side. Now, when you go to your cause, what is the role? What are the roles? The visionary. See, here you need a visionary. Here you need a pastor teacher. Here you need leadership. Organizationally, you need people. What are the roles? The best managers. The best managers. Who knows how to do that? Who knows how to create efficient systems and accountability? Okay, so you can just run through this. The key persons, they promote that. Guess what they do? They get visitors that Sunday. Naturally. But think about this. So somebody comes and they take $100 bill out. You know, that person probably has a need. That's why that church is so strong. I mean, they're a couple $1 million annual budget. So you think, well, you know, if they take money out, that's God's money. Yeah, it is. Yeah. But people, the pastor says the people that come have legitimate needs. And you know what? They reach those people. There's a church, those people begin to say, they're not out for what I have. They care about me. So people come, poor families will come, and they will actually he has people bow their heads so nobody's looking, and that plate comes down, and if people have a need, they take it out. But that church reaches those people. Guess what they do the next Sunday? They come back. The next Sunday, they give their hearts to Christ. It all starts with getting people to come. Now, I'm not suggesting every church should do that, but I'm saying that if I were pastor again, I wouldn't even pass the plates. I'd have boxes, just put them in. It works. because people are gonna give, it doesn't affect what you're gonna give. If you're a giver, you're gonna give. And then the visitors don't feel like they got me here to get my money, you know, and so forth. So we did that at the end of the service and asked them to take them back up. If we were in an evangelistic season and we had promoted, if I was preaching the gospel and we got visitors there, most times I would have people who were ready to bow their heads and receive Christ, and then indicate it on the card. Now here's something, and this is what I'm going to get to next, and it'll relate back to the back to the card. Is you have to get people now where they are. I hope I can sketch this out a little bit. I hope you can read my, I'm just going to abbreviate it. When I first started in ministry, evangelism was an event. Sunday, I preached the gospel. And people were either saved or not. They either came to Christ or they left lost. That was event evangelism. Now, that worked. Now here's why. Please understand this. If you, in pre-60s, I'm not even going to attempt to write, pre-60s, the fruit, the gospel fruit was ripe in America. It's just like my wife and I. We grew up in a small town. We heard the Bible, and I didn't have a church. My family weren't Christians. Never been in a church since I was 10 or 11 years old. I heard the gospel in school. The Bible Society came. If you just quote, memorize John 3:16, they give you a little red gospel of John. If you memorize a few more verses, they give you a New Testament. A few more verses, you got a whole Bible. Okay, so we lived in a culture that was gospel driven. America up until the 60s was a gospel ripe country because kids were exposed to the gospel truth in school, of course in churches, vacation Bible, whatever. But now that's not true. See, the fruit was ripe on the tree. When I came to Christ, I knew the gospel. I heard it in school. I heard it when I told you about those men who came and invited us, and we went to vacation Bible school and got in Sunday school, and I was 11 years old then, 10 or 11, and so I knew the gospel. So when I was 17, I was a ripened fruit. My wife, girlfriend, was a ripened fruit. We responded. The night I came to Christ, and my wife did, there were probably, I don't know, of our high school football team, that because the evangelist had come to our school and preached to the whole student body. I'm just trying to make you understand the difference in the culture, because if you understand the difference in the culture, then you can begin to say, okay, how do we reach the culture? The fruit's not ripe on the tree like it was. So when visitors come, most likely, they don't know what the gospel is. They'll come because they're hurting. Maybe they got a relationship problem going on in their life and they're desperate, or maybe they got somebody sick and dying in their family. They don't know what to do. And so, why don't we go to church? Maybe we can find some answers at church. You know. So they show up, and evangelism as an event is culturally counterproductive. It don't mean that somebody may come that's like that, but by and large, that's just not true. Now here's what has to happen now. This has now have to be added, is that before evangelism, like we used to do, I mean, I could preach a simple gospel message back in the late 60s and 70s, And almost every Sunday, somebody would walk down the aisle and we'd lead them to Christ. And that just kind of began to filter away. So what you have down now is you have to have a process. Pre-evangelism. And when people get to here, you have to give them time to understand. And if you press the gospel on people who they don't understand it yet. In fact, they've been getting negative information. Do you realize kids in school now get anti-Bible information? They're taught the Bible isn't true. I can promise you, when I was going to school in the 40s and 50s, graduated high school in 1959, nobody would have dared put the Bible down. We read the Bible every day. A student would go to the office and read the Bible over the intercom system. Then we would stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. Remember that? Any of you grow up back, those are good days. So, that's not true anymore. So if you attract people to church, then you got to understand, get them where they are, not where you want them to be. That's where the card comes in so beautifully. Because you allow people to tell you where they are. And then you know how to reach them. One of my best friends all my life, born the same year, same town, every grade of school. When we got up old enough to play sports, we played football, basketball, baseball together, all the way through. And at 68, he was still unsaved. I only saw him maybe 4 or 5 times through the years when we would have reunions. And he didn't want to hang around too close because he knew as a preacher, he was a heavy drinker and he wasn't really interested in Christ at all. And on my 20th anniversary of my church, one of the ladies in our class invited the class to come, and he came. Had about 25 or 30 there. And Carlos filled out a card. He was 68 years old. Alcoholic. He filled out a card. He would have never walked down that aisle. He wasn't ready, but he was curious. He was moved by God. He filled out a card, and the next day I called him and met him, led him to Christ, and baptized him. He drove back and forth about 20 miles for a couple of months, and I helped him get into the church where he lived. And I preached in that church, one of the great blessings of my life. I preached in the church where I had recommended him to go. And I'm sitting down in the front when they did the offering, and Carlos came walking down the aisle, helped receive the offering. And I watched him take an envelope out of his pocket, put it in play. He would never have responded here, but he put on the card, "I'm interested." And that's where you have to get to, because the come forward invitation actually grew out of the revivals across the country. That was never even a part of the church until the great revivals, going back to Mordecai Ham, Billy Sunday, went up to Billy Graham. And so every once in a while somebody, who's going to be the next Billy Graham? They won't. Never happened. If you had someone with the same magnetism and ability, it would, those days are gone. So nobody's going to step into that because the culture's changed. People don't respond in that way anymore. Billy Graham, during his long, fruitful years, was preaching to a gospel-ripe culture. And they came by the thousands and thousands. And this is not true anymore. So, from this, you glean, first, and I'm gonna hope I have time to get to, how do you get them here? How do you get them here? Well, I can promise you one thing, you gotta do more than what you've ever done. Would you agree to that? Because I know you invite people, but how do you do that? We'll hopefully get to that. May have to do another time, but. So, the culture has changed. And so, if you recognize that, and by the way, here's the other thing that you learn from what people tell you. I had someone tell me one time, back when, I was singing 18 verses of Just As I Am, I Surrender All, and the whole bit. I was most persuaded. And I learned that people said, Pastor, I got people I want to bring, but I don't want them to, I feel very uncomfortable when you put pressure on them. And I learned from that. And when we stopped making that 40s and 50s and 60s appeal, trying to get people in that one Sunday, our production went way up. We started reaching many more for Christ. When we would take this card, this was our system, that card was turned in, and our secretary would type on the computer, one page, Joe and Joan Smith, or whatever. Or if it's a single person, doesn't matter. Everybody got one sheet. And all the information that we could get from that card, phone numbers, emails, so forth. Then we had a staff member 2 nights a week that from the office called, because we told them up front, if you fill out the card, we won't show up at your house. That's the number one reason people won't fill out a card. And by the way, the new generation won't even give you their address. There's a survey, 80% of the new generation will not give you their address. Do you know why? They don't want you to come to their house. So on our card that I've designed for you, if you want to use it, the address is optional. That stands out. So we just ask for their phone numbers and their email, because that's how they'll be contacted. So my staff member on 2 nights a week would go and start calling these people, and he was very good at it. He had a headset, he could lean back and talk casually, and let them know they were welcome, ask them, good leading questions, and he would write. He'd write all the information down. Loved the children's ministry, loved the music, tolerated the preaching, whatever. Write it down, write it down, write it down. And then that would be turned back into the office. The secretary then would take all those scribbled notes, retype it, throw the old one away. I would get a copy, he would get a copy for the next week. And he would make, he would make appointments for me on Wednesday evening. We had elective Bible studies, we had Awana, we had a great youth meeting going on, sometimes up to 200 teams. And these parents who would bring their middle school kids and junior high school kids would hang out. And so these visitors, my staff member would say, the pastor would love to meet with you. He would be glad to come to your home, meet you for coffee or lunch, or meet you in his office. We never had anybody, and I'm talking about many hundreds through those years, we never had anybody say, come to my house. You know why, don't you? You remember the front porch culture? The husband worked, the wife stayed home. That's gone. Young couples both working now just to survive. So there's no front porch culture. And women don't want anybody coming to their house. They're doing homework, they're doing dinner, they're getting the kids bathed, they're busy, and they don't want that. Never had anybody say, yo, come to me. Now that's back in the 60s, that was different. It's changed. So on Wednesday night, I would have 1, 2, or 3 appointments while all these activities were going on. And I was leading people to Christ, confirming them for baptism if they've not been baptized and were believers, or helping them transfer into the membership of our church. Then on Sunday morning, that following Sunday, they would be introduced at the end of the service. People would welcome them, and we just had additions growing. So that produced growth, so that we were able to build a beautiful new multi-purpose building. It's got two Awana courts. It's got a full basketball court. It's got a double volleyball court that converts. And it's a beautiful. Anybody ever seen it? You ought to go some. You've been. Okay, it's a multi-purpose building. If you carpeted the floor, you'd never know anything other than it was building a worship center. So we had those kind. We had a volleyball co-ed volleyball league going. We had a basketball league going. What we would do, we would select team captains, train them to how to evangelize. So I think we had 8 co-ed volleyball teams. Okay, so you take 8 who are trained to do relationship evangelism, and then they would come. Guess what happened? When guys played basketball, they're in their 20s and 30s, they played, they played at Plant City High School, or they played at Durant, or whatever. In Lakeland, it was the 4 high schools. Some of them played a little, and now they're in their 20s, even 30s, some of them in their 40s, and they would unite on a team. Guess who came to see them play? Their mothers and their dads and their kids and their friends. They packed the stands. Guess what I did? I got to meet all these people. They're sitting there. I'm not going out knocking on doors like I did in the 60s and 70s. They're coming to us, meeting them, getting acquainted. A young couple he became our business manager. He graduated from South Florida, he's a CPA. They came to our church because he was a crackerjack high school basketball player. Didn't go to college, he could have, but he got married, and they didn't have a children. And he heard about our basketball league. Somebody invited him, he comes. And guess what? They connect to the church. They've become part of our church. They grew. He became one of my staff guys. He's now the CFO for Aaron Bergner, who grew up in our church, the pastor of Lake Church in Lakeland. He's Aaron's CFO. Okay, you see what I'm talking about? You create events to get people to come. In their case, they're already saved, but they were looking for a church, and they came to us that way.
Brother Jay, we don't have any of that right now.
I'm sorry?
We've got a basketball court.
I'm sorry?
We don't have any.
Oh, no, you
of
don't,
that. So
everybody can't do that.
What can we do as a little church?
If I were, okay, I'll tell you one idea.
Okay.
I'll go places, and I realize sometimes I'm the only one who's visionary there. Because people don't think about that. That's just who I am. But one thing we did at our, before we had anything else, we didn't have a building. When I hired our first staff member part-time, because we had no money back then, we grew to have $750,000 annual, but we were taking in like $130,000 a year. Okay, so what do? We got enough money together. We built a double beach volleyball on our property. Guess what singles love to do? That property filled up with these young couples wanting to play beach volleyball. And we reached them. And our fastest growth came early on through the singles department, who then grew into what we called our teammates class, that got up to about 90 in attendance, that one class. Most of them came as 20, 18, 19, 20, 25-year-old singles. A lot of them married and became part of the teammates class. The singles director that I hired on staff moved with them to teammates when they had about 30 and grew up to about 90. Okay, you figure out what you can do. I would suggest to you that you invest in creating a volleyball area. I looked at your whole property, but I think you got enough, a lot more property to do that. And of course, you take the nets down unless you're gonna use it. Although you don't have to do that, but we did. We had certain times when, because the director wanted to be there. So volleyball times were like 2 or 3 times a week or on the weekend, and the word got out, everybody's invited, suddenly you look out there and you got cars all over the place, you know, maybe 50 kids, young people out there getting ready to play beach volleyball. So, yeah, you figure out, if you don't have a building, you do what you help with. And that would be where I'd begin here, because that's the easiest thing to do. You don't have to have a building for that. But you get creative with how you can have an outreach. I call it incrementalism. You know, if you could wave a magic wand and have a lot of money and a lot of buildings, a lot of property, a lot of staff, but it's not the case. So it's incrementalism. It's like the guy who was hired to put down a fence post out in Texas, and you couldn't even see the end, you know. And he was depressed. He said, start digging here and go down. He said, how am I ever going to do this? And he said, one fence post at a time. That's the way life is. So you figure out what you can do now. That's easy. Of course, you got a basketball court out here, but unless you organize it for something, then it'll just be random. Kids will come, shoot baskets, go home, which is good. But you can organize those kind of events. I don't know. I don't know the area that well. I don't know how many kids there are in the area, teenagers, so forth. But you got to figure out what you can do, one fence post at a time, and knowing what I know about how beach volleyball attracts the 20s and 30s, that would be an easy thing to do. Yes.
And then, I'm guessing, you tell me if I'm wrong.
Pardon?
I say, I'm guessing, you tell me if I'm wrong about what I'm going to say. I think what you're saying is figure out some kind of small event you can do, but you have to tie it in with your pre-evangelism
Oh, yeah.
Process there, right? It's not enough just to get the people here, you have to
No.
tie it in with your.
Well, what you want to do, see, first you connect with people. That's why we call the card connect, communicate. You connect and then they communicate with you. But yeah, like with our sports leagues, the leaders never, they didn't say, get on your knees, I'm gonna lead you. It was like building a relationship with them, and we always had they would have a prayer. And he would always pray the gospel. Our staff guy would always, he'd say, okay, we're gonna, before any game, like you got 4 teams going to play there are going to be 2 basketball games. So before every game, the 2 teams were gathered, and our staff leader would again remind them that we're to be courteous. This is not about winning, it's about having a good time, because guys are a little more aggressive. What true in the volleyball was co-ed. And then he would say, okay, we're gonna have prayer. He would always pray the gospel in the prayer, but no pressure. Well, a lot of those guys came to Christ. They came back to church on Sunday. They got in a Bible, out of a Bible fellowship, what we call it. We quit calling Sunday school, because kids don't want to go to school. They don't even want to go on Monday. And adults sure don't want to go to school. So we called every minister by a special name. For example, all our adult groups have a name like Prime Time, Golden Agers, Prime Time, Home Builders, Teammates. Kids Junction was kids, but you want to go to, we didn't say, hey, you want to go to Sunday school? Say, hey, you want to go to Kids Junction? What's Kids Junction? Say, well, it's kind of like Disney World. Not really, but it was fun. I mean, we had good music, kids music, and we had good stuff. They enjoyed going. So we quit using the word Sunday school. We used terms like inviting someone who's maybe a senior citizen, to come to Golden Acres, you know, or come to Prime Time, which was underneath the Golden Acres, like 50s and 60s or something like that. But you want to attract and attach and without putting pressure on people who don't know the gospel yet to come to Christ. Is that what you're talking about, primarily?
So we've got an event coming up called Easter.
Pardon?
And that's one of the most attended times of the year, followed by Mother's Day. If we could possibly, as a church, get some sort of process in place where we had people assigned for getting the cards out, connecting with the cards, connecting with the people, if we got all that in place, would that be a good time and event to start with for us where we are?
Any event, but here's the thing. Here's where of course, our building, we could, I don't know how many, we could, a couple hundred in there or more with round tables. But when we did Mother's Day deal, we called it like mother-daughter sometimes, but people invited their connections to come. It wasn't just for the church. Most churches do Mother's Day events or Valentine events. It's just for the church.
Look, I was thinking kind of the same lines, well, what about, like, I know Hopewell does it all the time, but what about doing like an Easter event here, you know? Because I know we're kind of in the, kind of hidden here versus what they are over there. We do a little advertisement and do like an Easter event here like the week prior or something. I know,
Children love the Easter.
and I know that over there, we always do, we have an SOS booth, because I just did their SOS booth with Fall Festival. We always have one, and you always get, you know, if people accept Christ.
And we're having the evangelism training next Monday.
Yeah.
This is all kind of falling into
Yeah,
place.
I think that would be, and
Yeah,
invite those folks, we do it the week before, it's, hey, you know, next Sunday is, you know, Easter, come with us, if we're doing the sunrise or whatever we're doing. And I think, you know, church spends money, you know, I think it would work out. We have tons of land across the street over there to do it in.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and when you plan events, you should always be thinking, how we're gonna reach people with them.
That's what I'm saying, there's probably a little advertising, put some signs out in the corners, probably dropping some off at some flyers at some stores, or put maybe in store windows or whatever, because I know here we are kind of hidden versus Hopewell is not so much.
Well, anytime you're gonna have an event, here,
Yeah.
for example, let's say you're gonna do a Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Okay, all the mothers get together and say, how can we reach people with this event? Okay, now, we would assign tables, we call tables of 8. We could put 8 people. Okay, so 2 couples would have that table. They had to fill the table. So you're gonna have 2 more couples, or 2, whatever it is, mothers or whatever, but you fill the table. But when you plan an event, plan it for reaching people, not just for yourselves. You know, we're gonna meet and have Mother's Day meal, and we're gonna have a good time. Okay, and by the way, that's when men get an opportunity to serve. So when you have a Mother's Day event, we don't need mothers in the kitchen. The men take care of that. They serve. You know, we put white shirts on and red ties. They come, they don't get tips either. They come and serve. They bring plates. So it's not kind of cafeteria line. We did kind of that way. So you get men involved in serving. And that's good for men, right? It's good for them. It's good for the ladies. But when you create any event, you're creative to fulfill your mission. Now sometimes, you know, there's sometimes when you do something just for fellowship. That's fine. You know, we need that. We need togetherness, and we'll do something like that. But when you plan events, and then to develop a contact system, you know, if you get information from people, then you put that into the system. When I went to my last church, we had about 80 people. Okay, so I did what I call, and I would suggest you do, an inside church census. For example, we passed out cards and people wrote down the names of anybody they knew in their family, in their neighborhood, people that they were connected with. that were either unsaved or unchurched. So we accumulated enough people that back then we did permit mailing. You needed 200 to do permit mailing. So we began sending to these people. So when we had an event, we had a mailing list that were already connected. So you have to build the whole system from ground up, of course. Now, I don't have a clue what time it is, so. Okay. Well, did I tell you about mosquito news column? Okay, I didn't tell you that. Well, that's what I feel like. The mosquito flying over news colony said there's so much to do, I can't get to all of it. That's kind of where I think Glenda Joe made some copies of some bulletins. All that kind of plays into connections where you see the most. Let me ask you: if your house is on fire, kids are all out, everybody's out, everybody's safe, but you got time to go get one thing. What do you get? Your refrigerator, your stove, your table, or what?
My pictures.
Pictures. Pictures. Why? Because that's your life. That's your life. That's what life is, the relationships. Without that, there's nothing. So pictures are so vital. That's why I recommend that churches do away with the standard bulletins and you start putting pictures on there. I have some, there's some back on the table. Because here's what happens. When you do that, kids take that home with them. Adults take them. And because pictures are alive. And that's the connection thing. So that's easy to do now with digital. And you just take pictures, they go on there, random pictures every week, different pictures, different people, and it builds connection. Did anybody ever have Olin Mills pictures made for your family? Do you remember what they would do? They had this package, this cost more, and so being poor, we'd say, well, we just have to take that one.
I got one picture.
Okay. What are you gonna do with those? Or we burn them. What? Same kids, just different poses. Guess what they do? That was so smart. You couldn't let them burn those pictures. So you buy the next package, right? How many did that? Sure, you can. They're somewhat similar, but a little different, so yeah, we'll buy them too. Pictures are life. And church, that's just one little thing that really helps, because when you pass out a bulletin and people see their kids, their family or whoever, they'll take it home with them. And they'll lay it around, they'll look at it and hand it to their mother, their dad, or their brother, or their sister. And by the way, that also communicates to people that's a people church. You know, that people connect, people care. So that's very important. You know, we did major, when you reach a point where you can do that, we did a major mail piece, for example, every Easter. Here's one we did. It worked so well. Little girl says, all dressed up and somewhere to go. Just a cute little girl, and those were mailed out to thousands of people. Guess what? People who never go to church have a compulsion somewhat to go on Easter. Well, we're going to go to church. It's Easter. Oh. And I've heard pastors actually put them down for being there. Like, well, we got our Easter lilies here today. They'll bloom today and they'll be gone tomorrow. No. Man, I'm glad they're there. You get a chance to expose the gospel to them. So we always got a lot of good visitors off that. And here's one we did, another Easter mail out. Sometimes it's easier now to do a card, but you're not ready for that. But somewhere along the way, that would be a great thing to do. Once you get everything together, get it going, then you want to move forward with creating more and more people coming. Can I tell you something, and I just confess this? When I first went to my last church, I told them, don't invite anybody. Don't. Wait. If you got a friend, you want to, yeah, just wait a few weeks. Give me some time. But quite honestly, I didn't even want to be there. Why? I would not have joined the church I was pastoring how I moved to Lakeland. I was there because God sent me there. But to me, it was boring, it was disordered, it wasn't attractive. But my goal was to make that, become that, make it the church you would want to be a part of. So that's just a confession. Don't tell anybody I said that. Okay, any questions? I'm going to wind it up. It's almost 12. Donnie's so hungry, he's on his stomach growling. So, any questions about it? Now, if you are interested, I know you have some things lined up, that's fine, but if you're interested, I will come back and do an official presentation of Restart, how that would work, because that takes, a month at a time, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. If you're interested in that, I will share that, how that would work, how you put all this information together and make it work. But that takes some time. It's not a one Sunday deal. It'd take a month or 2 or 3 in order to do that and get you ready to call a pastor. And by the way, I have a tremendous, I can't tell you who, can't even hint, but there's a 33-year-old, very gifted in worship, youth, and preaching. Never pastored, but he's ready. Trained on staff for 12 years. Just like one of my preacher boys from my church is now pastor at Indian Rocks. Anybody know where Indian Rocks Church? Largo? A couple of thousand strong. Their offering in December was $1 million. That's a lot of money. He's the new pastor, never pastored. But they selected him because he's well trained. He's a great communicator, well trained. I have a 33-year-old man, family, well educated, who's ready to pastor. And he's been in his home church on staff for 12 years. So at some point, if you get ready to be interested, then I'll be glad to share that with you. In the meantime, if you want me to help you for a little while, I would want to come back and tell you how that would work, not just off today. So, any other questions? Okay, let's pray together. Let's have prayer. Thank you, Lord, for just letting us be in ministry, for giving us the opportunity to share in what will last forever, eternally, what we do together, affect the lives of so many people eternally. So I thank you for these people. Thank you for their commitment. And help us to learn, grow, do our best. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, brother. Just one more, a couple more things really. For the men's group, meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. right here. I just got handed that announcement too. And a couple of thoughts for me personally on some of the stuff that he had said a while ago. I think a key for us, once we start handing out, I think we really need to get a doorman back there, because I think when we get visitors come in, people really don't greet them. I'm the worst one for shaking hands. I'm gonna tell you that right now. It's just not my forte, and it's something I need to work on about shaking people's hands. But I think if we get a door greeter back there and to welcome folks, because I'll tell you, my dad's the door greeter at Hopewell, and he knows the whole church by name. And the guy before him, Linwood, knew everyone's name. And again, that's just not the person I am. But if we can, when they come in, they can maybe say, hey, the bathrooms are here, the bathrooms are over there, since we have kind of like a weird layout here, Even hand them the, if we go with the new flyer, right, the new registration form, hand them that, and just kind of maybe give them the church information. I think that would help welcome folks in too. And I do think, it would be really wrong of us to not take advantage of this Easter coming up, because when the folks come to church, Christmas and Easter, that is sometimes only, and I think it would really, we should really use that day to get, even if one person accepted the Lord. I mean, that's, because like for Fall Festival, we had one this year over there for them was low, but I mean, that's one person for the Lord, which is a huge thing, because that guy might be the next, a preacher from a few years from now. So I think it's really important to take advantage of that. If we just go rent, like when the bounce house is, it's music, it's some food, we make the games over there, we do an evangelist booth over there. Usually they'll hide eggs over there somewhere. I mean, we have more room than they have, so I think it would be, a great thing to really do. Run it for 3 hours, but it takes some advertising to do. And I was even thinking too, Joy FM, the church advertises for free on Joy FM. I think Moody too, I'm not sure as well. So maybe you can advertise on them, or anything with the church going on that's coming up, plug with them, because it's free advertisement for any church. But that was kind of my thoughts. But again, thank you so much, brother, for coming out today. It's always a great pleasure to have you here. And I think he closed this out with prayer. So you guys have a great week.
I'm gonna let here. These are my resume. You'll look at it. I'll put some here.
If you're going to come to the SOS evangelism training next Monday night, let me know, because we're gonna provide a brown bag lunch or dinner.
You guys caught that coming for SOS next Monday. Let Linda know right there. Let her know.
Look, it's done. Drop it.